Well, as a parapsychologist, it strikes me that our alienation from nature, the way in which women are oppressed in our society, the way in which many workers are alienated from their own work, although I think less so perhaps today than in Marx's age, all is suggestive to me of a climate in which we're alienated from the depths of our own psyche.
That's right. And it even becomes a question of what our own psyche is. You know, in the title of that essay, Prisoners of Property and Propriety, it's propriety also in the French sense, propriété, or what is propre, what is proper to oneself.
Yeah.
In other words, to be a property holder in the modern Enlightenment conception, you know, of the natural rights of man, including the right to private property, you first have to have a concept of what is proper to yourself.
Yeah.
Right, of what define the limits of your selfhood, your subjectivity as compared to another person. And so the upshot of that essay is actually a deconstruction of the persona through an analysis of the way that memory and thought function robotically to reinforce certain social expectations and to construct our personality for us in an unconscious way that's actually ultimately oppressive.
And so many people, when you ask them, as parapsychologists sometimes do, have you had psychic experiences? We have a situation where the higher people are up on institutional hierarchies, the less likely they are to acknowledge psychic experiences that are common in the general population until they get maybe to the very top.
That's right, and you've made a point to me that the psychop people, who are the greatest bane of the parapsychology research community in general, embody this modern scientific rationality of the Enlightenment, which these critics of mine in Jacobin want us to return to. But this same modern scientific rationality is what's responsible for the devastating alienation of man, say, from the ecological system of the Earth.
Skeptics of parapsychology will sometimes say, we don't care what empirical evidence you have, it contradicts a rational view of the universe, and therefore it must be wrong. In fact, I'll tell you this, the people who wrote that article about you in the Jacobin magazine, I thought they had an interesting argument in favor of Enlightenment philosophy. I invited them to be on this program, but they said, well, we don't know because Jorjani seems to be involved in parapsychology. And I said to them, parapsychology can be justified according to rational principles. That's what parapsychologists do science for, to show that using the scientific method, this empirical evidence exists. And at that point, the conversation ended because they didn't want to go any further with that. They had nothing to say, and they just simply want to disagree. And that's, to me, it's very unfortunate that the so-called rationalists, who I admire in many ways, take that point of view.
Yes, and it's also terribly disingenuous, because one of the things these individuals argued is that we need to return to the Socratic method in education. And that defined my teaching. Anyone who was in my classrooms would remember that I really adopted the Socratic method. I was intensely interested in engaging with counter-arguments and a variety of perspectives, and taking positions entirely out of devil's advocacy to see where an interesting argument might lead. And that's exactly the opposite of what these defenders of modern scientific rationality do in practice. Which, and I just said in practice, it reminds me that I think it's worth pointing out that in my body of work, one thing I've tried to do is not just preach deconstruction, but to practice it. And unless someone understands that, they really remain clueless about what it was I was trying to accomplish with Prometheus and Atlas, not just as a text, but as a project at work in the world.
Well, I think when you talk about practicing deconstruction to people who are rationalists, that makes you dangerous. And frankly, the same people have accused me for being a spokesperson for the science of parapsychology and of being dangerous because I'm undermining what they regard as an absolute truth.
Yes, but I would say that, I mean, you know, this article was titled something like, you know, Aliens, Anti-Semitism, and Academia, or something like that. And so the people who are accusing me of being an anti-Semite or other even more ridiculous things don't realize just how dangerous I am. I'm considerably more dangerous than they think.
Well,
because I cannot be fit into those cupboards and categories.
No, and their desire, the desire of many different people to pin labels on you, I think is because they sense you're dangerous and they fear that you're dangerous in a bad way. My sense is that you are dangerous in a very positive way.
I affirm that I epitomize postmodernity. The difference is that I have a positive vision of the New Age.
Mm-hmm.